Today, we've got the very definition of putting all your eggs in one basket or betting it all on black because, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Most of you who have been following this channel for a while will know, of course, we followed the very hilarious misadventures of Dan Harrison of running Leicestershire County Council, and they've been very, very comical. And one of the things that he is putting all his chips on, again, to keep on using these analogies because it literally is what he is doing. He has done, or at least commissioned, this external audit review to be done by an external company, bear in mind, to try and find, wait for it, £1.4 million. Right? Now, for those of you who know anything about local government will know that after over a decade of austerity, these councils are already like running as much as threadbare as they can. They've trimmed all the fat, they've cut all the unnecessary stuff that they can, and they are running at a very, very decreased budget at times, as well as when the demand for these services is an all-time high. They've literally done everything they can. So when reform were, of course, coming in not only in Leicestershire, but in all these other counties, like, oh, we'll come in, we'll cut this, we'll get rid of this waste. All the other councillors from all the other parties were turning around and going, what exactly are you going to cut? Because we've cut everything we possibly can to a point where it will not affect services. And if you cut them any more, by the way that reform were talking about it, you will affect services. At which point, bear in mind, that's where things like lawsuits might be getting involved because, people can sue over that type of thing. So that will cost the council money as well in the long run. So he has done everything he can to this, and we are looking at this being now reported. I think it's next week. So bear in mind, this audit company, this outside audit company, has been asked to audit an entire council in less than 3 weeks. Something which would normally you would see about maybe about 6 months, maybe even a bit longer than that. I don't think, shall we say, when this review comes back, it's going to be sunshine and roses for that. But remember, why is it coming back now? Because we are in December. It's budget season. These councils that are doing their budget for next year means that the budget has to go to the cabinet this month. Has to go for this month. And remember, December is a pretty short month. You've only really got probably this and next week, really. And then after that, most people are off. And then, of course, it goes to the full council in January, and then it goes to the budget committees in February. And those are the deadlines. You have to meet those. You cannot add extra time or anything like that. You can have extra meetings, and they will put in, and councils will put in extra meetings for this thing because it is important. But this is a very busy time for people in the council, especially if they are involved in finance. That's why Darren Grimes has been constantly tweeting out everything here, there, and everywhere that he can to try and say, don't worry, this budget's going to be amazing. We'll see what happens when it comes due. But we're going to have a look at this because there is a lot of skepticism, and I think very justifiably so, at the fact that Dan Harrison is going to try and pull it out of the bag and deliver all these savings. So let's go over to this because, oh boy, are we in for some fun when this comes in potentially next week. So Leicestershire councillors have now raised major concerns over whether now the necessary savings can actually be found before next year's now looming budget deadline. The Reform UK leader of Leicestershire County Council announced just last month that he had agreed a £1.4 million contract that will see consultant firm Newton carry out now a deep dive into the authorities' books in a bid now to reduce costs. So bear in mind, he has spent £1.4 million on this. That is insane. And the reason why this is insane is you have internal auditors. Dan Harrison could have done this internally and cost nothing. Well, it would have cost money, but it would have cost nothing, not at least to this extent. But of course, remember, people like Harrison, people in these reform people, do not trust people in their local government. They think that those council workers, even those council auditors, are secretly squirreling away, burying the treasure, and that one day, these auditors will walk in and just find all this, money hidden under the desks. That's not what's going to happen. But that's what Harrison thinks will happen. That's why he's bringing in these outside people. So, but this is where it gets funny now. Opposition councillors, of course, do remain very much unconvinced that these savings will, of course, be found in time for the authority to sign off its budget in now the coming years, typically, of course, done in February. Bear in mind, the budget has to be approved by the cabinet in December for it to go to the council for the full council meeting in January about this. Very limited amount of time this company has to try and do this. So the cash-strapped council needs to plug an expected £90 million gap in its day-to-day spending by 2029, something it is, of course, currently legally bound to do, and has an £80 million shortfall in money set aside for projects and £118 million deficit it needs in special needs budgets. The Liberal Democrat councillor Simon Galton has said that he has now had major concerns about what the reform group is now attempting to do with the review. He said, first, of course, is the timescale. It is a very real tall order to produce anything by the time that we have to set a budget now in late February. That could make any way contribution to trying and closing the budget gap of this year. It seems to me that this is a much far longer timescale, if anything. Although they have said that they will now produce some findings and, of course, report, we know that having ideas to start with or even possible savings, this is just now at the beginning of a process. It can take years to put those things into action through service transformation and, of course, so on, possibly even longer than the authority has got left. So this is just insane that they seem to think that they can just do this and they'll come back with all these savings. I guarantee you it's not. This isn't going to save Dan Harrison. He's going to look like a complete fool when I think they come back with this. And I think quite rightly he will get absolutely eviscerated. But goes on. He also said that he now feared the, quote, low-hanging fruit had all gone when it comes to all the areas that the council could, of course, make savings. Under the council's Lib Dems, the leader, Michael McCallie, echoed all these concerns, saying that around 280 million currently in savings had already been made by the authority in 2010, of course, begs the question of how much more savings there are left to be found without, of course, cutting into essential services that the council provides. And this is it. If you know anything about local authorities, which we've said at them before, they have already done this. They've been going through austerity since 2010, and they've done £280 million worth in savings over those 10 years. So for all these reform people going, oh, well, there's all this waste, fraud, and abuse, they've been forced to do that through austerity. £280 million they've done since 2010. That's not nothing. Where are they going to get all this rest of the stuff from? Anyway, he went on to add, of course, the group will not support something that did, of course, serious damage to services. The Conservative leader of the opposition, Deborah Taylor, said that she was, of course, keen, of course, willing to keep, quote, an open mind when it, of course, comes to the review. However, she said, I do not think it will deliver much before we have to set a budget for next year. It concerns me greatly, of course, with the budget gap that we are now still showing going forwards. The Labour leading authority, Joel Meyer, also raised issues with the 1.4 million price tag for the review, saying now that it would pay now for a lot of staff to actually deliver services, which is again very true. Councillor Taylor also promised leader Dan Harrison on the free DOGE-style audit promised by the National Party in the run-up to the May local election, asking if the council had ever received a formal offer for the team to visit. Harrison had confirmed that this had not happened in Leicestershire, and he further still that his administration themselves, of course, invited the Doge team to visit the council. He said, I do feel the appointment now of an external consultant would be the best approach to try and access the high level of savings that the county council was required to deliver. This is what the administration ultimately decided to approve. Yeah, because remember, Doge, or the Doggle unit as it's called down in Kent, failed. It never got off the ground. It had a full team. Zia Yusuf was in charge. He now left. Then he got back in charge. And now Richard Tice is now in charge, and he has shown no interest in any of this at all, because it failed to deliver any significant savings in Kent. So are they going to roll this out to other councils and go do this? No. Because they've realized, oh, actually, this might actually be quite embarrassing if we went and did this and went, oh, well, we're going to find all this savings, etc. Oh, can't find any. Anyway, responding now to, of course, opposition concerns, and of course, lead member now for resources, Harrison Fowler, said that he was, of course, very happy with the early indications from the efficiency review and had, quote, full confidence in Newton. Well, it depends what Newton comes back with. I know that they are an audit company and this is sort of what they do, but I don't know, 1.4 million price tag. I think the people who run Newton are probably very happy with that, but I don't think they'll be going to be getting any Christmas cards from Dan Harrison when that final review comes in. He went on to add that, yes, it is, of course, very ambitious, especially, of course, with the timescale. We're, of course, constrained on time when it comes to the budget. We are, of course, fully aware of that. We are not going to try and pull the wool over anyone's eyes, but ultimately, we will have to be working with Newton now for a couple of weeks. It's still its early stages, but we have the confidence that we will now able to deliver these savings. Yes, it is not going to fix the problem overnight, and yes, it is going to be a long-term thing, but that doesn't mean that savings cannot be delivered quickly. All the experienced councillors are saying otherwise. All the experienced councillors are saying otherwise. He also went on to further acknowledge that the 1.4 million sum, of course, did seem very stark. But he said it was, of course, sometimes necessary to spend money to make money, and that Newton's payment was now performance dependent, he added. So how much are you going to be paying them if it's performance dependent? Do they get a bonus if they find more than that? You know? And not only that, but him saying spend money to make money. Why then spend 1.4 million on an audit company when you could spend that money, I don't know, investing in something? How about that? That might be worth more to the people of Leicestershire than spending it on an audit company that, let's face it, when they review, probably are not going to come back with too much. I can guarantee you that now. So Newton, of course, could end up taking home up to £30 million. This is because once the areas have been identified where costs can be cut, the council will, of course, need to choose whether to implement those, and if they will need, of course, Newton's help to do so. What have they been asked to do? Oh yeah, we've identified these things that can be cut. Oh yeah, by the way, we might need the audit company's help to do so. This is, I think, becoming very clear in Leicestershire that Dan Harrison does not trust his own employees, because you could do this. And this could have been done for free internally in the council, but Dan Harrison doesn't trust people who work at Leicestershire County Council because he thinks they're part of the problem. And I have to wonder whether there is going to be job cuts because of this. It would not surprise me if in this review they suggested job cuts. So I feel very sorry for anyone who might be working for Leicestershire County Council. So let's finish this off then. The savings, of course, incentives, which will require then support from the firm, will, of course, be costed individually. The decisions, of course, will be made on a project-by-project basis. Councillor Fowler also sought to reassure members that he understood the delicacy of trying to deliver savings without cutting services, he said. I assure you that our efficiency review will not put the risk of care the risk of care that residents currently receive. I think this absolutely will. This absolutely will. The idea that this is going to deliver anything, that they're going to come back and say, "Oh my God, we found all these savings," it's not. It's not. And you have all these people, these very experienced councillors who have been doing this for a very long time, who said, "What are you going to cut? We've cut 260 million pounds since 2010." Yeah, 280 million pounds since 2010. I, this is going to end very, very badly. This is going to end very, very badly because you've got to think already you are down 1.4 million potentially, depending on what Newton finds. And what's, bear in mind, in their contract and what they say is based on their performance. Because if it's 30 million that they're charging initially, well, that's only going to go up to, a potential 1.4 million. This is gonna go so wrong. You can just see what's going to happen here. It's just going to go wrong completely. So if you are from Leicestershire, do let me know what you think about this. That your council is spending this money on an external audit when it could have done one internally for far, far cheaper. And of course, as always, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to click the like, share, and subscribe. And of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.